A Season of Shadows. Chapter 1. The Widow in Black. The last of the winter fog clung stubbornly to the London streets as Mrs Julia Denham's carriage rolled to a halt before the townhouse on Brook Street. A tall, narrow structure of pale stone, it bore the look of something poised between dignity and fatigue, much like Julia herself. She descended with the composed grace she had spent 2 years cultivating. Widowhood had taught her that composure could be armour, mourning a shield, and silence the most eloquent form of defence. Her late husband, Mr Arthur Denham, had left her respectable, provided for, and carefully distant from the social fray. His death the previous spring had freed her in ways she could never admit aloud, yet it had bound her more tightly in others. The ton accepted widows so long as they behaved as marble statues, hands folded, eyes downcast, hearts safely cooled. Julia had done all that was expected. She had retreated to Bath, worn her black, spoken softly, remained dutifully solemn. But now she had been called back. Her younger sister, Amelia, was being launched into her first season under the patronage of their aunt, Mrs Farnham, and Julia's presence was required, which was, of course, the very reason she was anxious. London remembered her. London always remembered, and London remembered him. As her maid, Clara, exchanged greetings with the housekeeper and began directing trunks, Julia paused upon the threshold, looking up at the familiar staircase, the mouldings, the polished banister. Brook Street felt unchanged, yet she felt irrevocably altered. She stepped fully inside, shutting the door behind her, shutting out the lingering fog. 2 hours later, refreshed, relaced into a grey silk gown appropriate for a lady of dignity, she sat with her aunt in the drawing-room, discussing Amelia's prospects, the likely suitors, which assemblies they ought not miss. Julia nodded where expected, offered the occasional soft remark, and maintained the proper composure of a widow whose life now circled around the modest duties of family. It was all perfectly manageable, until her aunt said the name. "Lord Marcus Deane has returned from Italy. I am told he has taken his uncle's house in Berkeley Square for the season." Julia's breath caught. Not visibly, not enough for her aunt to notice, but enough that the air grew difficult to swallow. Lord Marcus Deane, the man whom society had once whispered about in tones part scandal and part fascination. Libertine, rake, breaker of rules, spiller of wine, spender of fortune. A man who could charm anyone with a well-placed smile and wound them with a single carelessly spoken truth. He had been Arthur Denham's rival since their school days, rival in wit, in fortune, in political circles, rival in confidence and reputation. And if the ton was to be believed, rival in the pursuit of Julia herself. Though Julia had never given him cause, nor encouragement, nor the slightest flicker of notice beyond polite civility. Yet everyone had known Marcus Deane was dangerous, especially to a young lady, especially to one with a gentle heart. So she had married Arthur. Steady, sensible, unromantic Arthur. A choice that had spared her scandal, but cost her something she had never dared name. "He is very different now, I hear," her aunt continued. "Sobriety suits him. Reflection, too. Italy has changed him." Julia managed a faint smile. People are fond of reinvention during travel. "Perhaps." Her aunt sipped her tea. "But Lord Deane's is a rather striking case. He is said to be quiet." Quiet. Lord Marcus Deane. Quiet. It seemed almost impossible. Julia gave a measured nod, refusing to let her thoughts wander further. Lord Deane's transformation, or lack of it, was none of her affair. She had returned to London for Amelia, not for the ghosts of her past. Still, that night, as she lay in the unfamiliar bed, the muffled sounds of the city drifting through the windows, she found herself recalling a moment from 7 years ago. A ballroom. A string of compliments she had been too innocent to understand. A steady gaze, Marcus's gaze, holding hers too long across the dance floor. a warning from Arthur afterward, his voice tight with possessiveness. "He is not for you, Julia." But Arthur was gone now, and Marcus Deane had returned. She turned onto her side, pulling the covers closer. She would avoid him. London was large. There were hundreds of drawing rooms, thousands of carriages, endless crowds. She would not see him at all. But London and fate were rarely so obliging. Chapter 2. A Dance Unbidden. Amelia's debut was a glowing success, at least according to Mrs. Farnham and every matron in attendance who considered youth and prettiness their personal accomplishment. The assembly rooms were brilliant with candlelight and warm with the hum of conversation. Julia, dressed in a deep amethyst gown befitting a widow who had set aside half mourning, watched as her sister floated from one dance partner to the next. Youthful excitement gleamed in Amelia's gaze. She was bright as a new star. Julia kept to the margins, observing rather than partaking. She accepted a few polite conversations from acquaintances, but declined all offers to dance. Widowhood gave her a camouflage of sorts. People assumed she wished to remain decorous, which, in truth, she did. Yet as the evening wore on, Julia sensed the shift in the room, the subtle turn of heads, the soft murmurs, a ripple of something more electric than the usual gossip. She felt him before she saw him. A tall figure entering the assembly, dressed impeccably in black and silver, a presence that drew the eye by the sheer force of a reputation, grudgingly revered, curiously examined, warily admired. Lord Marcus Deane. His dark hair was shorter than she recalled. His features were the same, sharp, handsome, knowing, but quieter, as her aunt had said. There was a stillness about him, a kind of watchfulness that felt unfamiliar. He spoke to no one at first. He merely scanned the room, searching, discerning, assessing. Julia forced her gaze firmly away. She would not look. She would not invite recognition. But it was no use. Across the crowded room, as if her refusal had been a beacon, Marcus Deane saw her. Their eyes met. The impact was immediate, a jolt beneath her breastbone. Not romantic. Heavens no. More like the shock of memory rushing back all at once. He inclined his head. Not the easy, charming smile he once used for ladies, not the irreverent grin of a scoundrel. A simple, solemn acknowledgement, almost respectful. Julia turned slightly, bringing her gloved hand to her throat, pretending to adjust her necklace, giving herself a moment to recover. Perhaps he would remain where he stood. Perhaps he would choose not to intrude. But Lord Marcus Deane had never been a creature of perhaps. Moments later, he was beside her. "Mrs. Denham," he said quietly, his voice richer than she remembered, steady, clear, without the old careless lilt. "Lord Deane." She managed an elegant bow of her head. "It has been some years." "7," he replied, nearly to the week. Julia stiffened. She had not expected him to remember the exact measure of time, nor that he would say so aloud. "You look well," he added, softer now. "London is clearly improved by your return." Her breath tangled. She forced calm. "You are very kind." "Kindness," he murmured, "is not something I recall practicing often in your presence. I am grateful for another opportunity." She froze. "I hope," he continued, "that this evening finds you in good spirits." "Yes, thank you." "Good. Then I wish you joy of it." And he stepped back. That was all. No flirtation. No provocation. No inappropriate familiarity or lingering insolence. Just a polite greeting and a graceful retreat. It unsettled her more than his former boldness ever had. Julia remained in her place, willing her heart to steady. But her tranquility was short-lived. The dancing set began. A lively tune filled the room, and Amelia hurried over, cheeks flushed. "Julia!" Lord Pembroke has asked me to join the set, but they require one more couple. Will you, just this once? Julia smiled apologetically. I should not. This evening is yours. But I want you there, please. Before Julia could respond, a low voice answered for her. If Mrs. Denham is in need of a partner, I shall be honoured. Julia turned, and there he stood. Marcus. His hand extended, his expression unreadable. The music swelled. People watched with open curiosity. Declining him would draw more attention than accepting. So with no graceful alternative, Julia placed her hand in his. Marcus led her to the dance floor with a respectful distance that confused her heart even further. As the figures began, he did not attempt charm. He spoke only when the steps required it. You avoid me, he said quietly as they passed each other. I do no such thing. A faint smile appeared. Then you ignore me with unusual precision. It is merely coincidence. She met his gaze. You have a reputation, my lord. I had one, he corrected. I no longer claim it. And yet the tongue remembers. The tongue remembers what suits their taste. His voice dipped. But what do you remember, Julia? Her steps faltered. He noticed. Forgive me, he said at once. I should not have pressed. The music carried them onward. Julia focused on the steps, the pattern, the turn, anything but the warmth of his hand in hers. Finally the dance ended. Marcus bowed deeply. Thank you for permitting me this set. I did not. You did, he interrupted gently, and for that I am unexpectedly grateful. Before she could form a reply, he was gone, swallowed by the crowd. Julia exhaled slowly, steadying herself against the swell of whispers rising around her. Lord Marcus Deane had danced with the widow Denham, and London had noticed. Chapter 3. A Reputation Reawakened. 3 days passed before Julia ventured again into society. She had hoped that the gossip would fade, that her dance with Marcus would be considered a polite necessity, nothing more. But the tongue, like a restless dog, adored assent. Whispers followed her at every tea, every promenade, every quiet visit to the milliner's. She heard them, soft voices, sharper eyes, murmurs masked as compliment. Imagine him dancing with her. I thought her the very model of propriety. For him to seek her out? Remarkable. She kept her expression serene, her movements deliberate. But beneath her composure, her stomach tightened with each stray word. She had worked too hard for her respectability, too long, too carefully. She would not see it shaken because Marcus Deane had chosen to behave like a man transformed. On the 4th morning, as she escorted Amelia to the modiste, a familiar figure turned into Bond Street, walking with measured steps. Marcus. Julia almost stopped. His eyes met hers instantly, as if he had been searching for her all along. He hesitated, polite, seeking permission. Her aunt beside Amelia stiffened. Oh dear. Marcus approached with courteous restraint. He bowed. Mrs. Denham, Miss Amelia, Mrs. Farnham. Julia inclined her head. Lord Deane. He turned to Amelia with a small smile. I had the pleasure of observing your dancing at the assembly. You conducted yourself with grace. Amelia blushed delightfully. Thank you, my lord. Then he looked at Julia. The air tightened. May I trouble you for a brief word? He asked. Julia's heart lurched. Here. I will keep to propriety. Her aunt cleared her throat. We shall continue to the modiste. Julia, do not be long. They stepped forward, leaving Julia and Marcus on the edge of the busy street, no more than 6 feet between them, respectable distance, yet perilously intimate. Marcus spoke first. You have every right to avoid me. But I hope to assure you of something. Julia folded her hands. Go on. I will not be the cause of any harm to your reputation. You already risk it by speaking to me. I know. His voice softened. And yet, I could not allow you to believe I seek to trouble you with improper intentions. Julia drew a breath. Your intentions are irrelevant. The ton will decide for itself. I hoped, he said, that you might allow me to show them something different. What do you mean? He looked down briefly, almost shyly. A man can change. I have been trying to for some time. She hesitated. Why tell me this? Marcus lifted his gaze, and the truth in his eyes startled her. Because, he said quietly, your good opinion once mattered to me, and it seems it still does. Julia's throat tightened. He bowed. That is all. Good day, Mrs. Denham. He turned and walked away. Julia stood motionless, unable to move, unable to breathe. Her heart, so carefully protected these last years, trembled as though someone had brushed it with warm fingertips. She hurried after her family, composed once more. But the moment clung to her for the rest of the day. That evening, as she returned home, her aunt waited in the drawing room, arms folded. You must be cautious, Julia. I am. Lord Deane is impressive, improved, but he is still Lord Deane. Julia removed her gloves with elegant calm. I do not intend to encourage him. Mrs. Farnham studied her. Yet he looks at you as if he intends very much. Julia paused. I cannot control his gaze. No, but you can control whether it follows you. Julia turned away. Her aunt's voice softened. My dear, you rebuilt your life after Arthur, slowly, painstakingly. Do not let a handsome, remorseful man undo it. I have no intention of letting anything undo me. Mrs. Farnham sighed. The heart rarely consults our intentions. Julia's pulse fluttered. She said nothing, but she suspected her aunt was right. Chapter 4. The Season of Shadows. The final weeks of the season unfolded in patterns of increasing tension. Marcus appeared at every gathering, every musical, every assembly Julia attended. Not intrusively, not improperly, but with a constancy that unsettled and steadied her in equal measure. He never sought to corner her. He never spoke out of turn. Instead, he offered only what was safe. Brief greetings, a polite bow, a nod from across a crowded ballroom. Yet his presence, silent and watchful, felt like a hand at the small of her back, guiding without touching. And Julia, despite herself, felt her guard soften. One evening, after a charity recital, he approached her as they exited into the moonlit courtyard. Her carriage had not yet arrived, and the night was cool enough to justify stepping beneath the colonnade. Mrs. Denham, he said quietly, may I walk with you? People milled about. It would not appear improper. She nodded. They walked side by side, keeping the requisite space between them. Gas lamps flickered overhead, scattering shadows across the gravel path. I owe you an explanation, Marcus said. Julia looked straight ahead. For what? For who I was, for what London believes me still to be. You owe me nothing. I owe you honesty. She hesitated. Then speak. Marcus slowed his steps. I left England because I was becoming someone I no longer recognized, someone who did not deserve the respect of any decent person, least of all yours. Julia's breath stilled. In Italy, he continued, I discovered two things. The first was that I could change. The second was that change means nothing if I return to London and fall into the same shadows. And what prevents you? He met her gaze. A promise. To whom? To myself. He paused. And perhaps to you. Heat rose beneath her skin. Marcus. He inhaled. Forgive me. I know I should call you Mrs. Denham. Julia swallowed. I did not say that. He stopped walking. She did too. The courtyard was half lit, half in shadow. A quiet, private space in a public world. I cannot pursue you, he said. Not openly, not with London watching us like hawks. No, she whispered. You mustn't. But I find, he said softly, that I cannot stop caring. Not after all these years. Not after seeing you again. Her heart thudded painfully. You mistake politeness for sentiment. I do not. His voice deepened. I see you more clearly now than I ever did. She took a shaky breath. Marcus, my reputation is intact, he said, and I intend it to remain so, which is why I have kept my distance, even when every part of me wants to. He broke off, jaw tightening. Julia stepped back instinctively, heart racing. This is dangerous, she breathed, for both of us. Yes, he agreed, and yet here we stand. She turned away, pressing a hand to the column. You had your life before. I have mine now. I have worked hard, built something steady, respectable. I cannot lose it. You will not lose it. You cannot promise that. He took a single step closer, but no more. You are the first thing I have wanted that is good for me. Her eyes faltered. And, he finished quietly, the one thing I will not claim if it brings you harm. Julia closed her eyes. Then what remains? He gently lifted her hand, only enough to let his fingertips brush her glove. The contact was light as breath, reverent, hesitant. A question rather than a claim. What remains, he said, is what you choose. Her pulse fluttered wildly. Choose, she whispered. I will stay away, he said, if that is your wish. And if it is not? Then, he murmured, I will wait for you. Silently, patiently, for as long as honor requires. Julia's throat ached with the force of everything she could not say. The rattle of carriage wheels sounded at the gate. Their spell broke. Marcus released her hand at once, stepping back. The shadows swallowed half his features, leaving only his gaze, open, steady, unguarded. Good night, Julia. She should have corrected him. She did not. In the weeks that followed, Julia found herself haunted by his words, by his restraint, his sincerity, the reverence with which he had touched her hand, as if she were something precious, not fragile. She saw him in passing, always dignified, always silent, always waiting. London gossiped, Julia endured. But the truth was this: Marcus Deane had changed. Not for her, but for himself. And the man he had become, a man of quiet strength, self-discipline, and earnest regard, was far more dangerous to her heart than the reckless libertine he once had been. One evening, at the final assembly of the season, she stood on the perimeter of the ballroom, watching the dancers. Amelia laughed in the centre of the set, glowing with youthful joy. Julia's heart felt both full and hollow. She sensed Marcus before she saw him. He always approached quietly. Mrs. Denham, he murmured. May I ask, are you content? She looked up at him, at his softened expression, his gentled spirit, his quiet strength. Her voice trembled. I have tried to be. He nodded once. Then I wish you every happiness, even if it is not with me. She inhaled sharply. He bowed, prepared to step back, prepared to withdraw forever. Julia's hand trembled. She lowered her gaze and whispered, Do not go. Marcus froze. Julia lifted her chin, meeting his eyes with a courage she had not known she possessed. I cannot be reckless, she said. "I cannot be careless, but I find I do not wish to lose, whatever this is." Marcus's breath shuddered out. "You choose me?" he whispered. "I choose," she said softly, "to see where this might lead." Slowly, reverently, Marcus extended his hand, not touching, simply offering. Julia placed her gloved fingers into his. A single, quiet choice. A season of shadows was ending, and something new, something fragile and luminous was beginning. Together they stepped into the light of the ballroom, and London watched with bated breath. But for the first time in years, Julia did not care. She had chosen her future, and Marcus Deane, remade, redeemed, and waiting, walked beside her. The end. Thank you, dear reader of the Regency Gazette, for joining us in another tale of love, intrigue, and whispered ballroom secrets. If today's romance delighted you, kindly bestow a like upon this video. It helps our Gazette reach more lovers of Regency storytelling. For weekly journeys into dukes, debutantes, scandals, and slow-burning devotion, please subscribe to the Gazette and tap the little bell so you are notified the moment the next story is published. Until our next edition, may your days be filled with grace and your nights with the promise of romance.